What's up, people? How you doing? J.R. Everhart here, your grumpy sound guy, coming to you from the metropolis of Inwood, West Virginia. That's kind of an inside joke with us local people. What we like to say is it's all good in Inwood. Today we're going to dive deep into band development. We got an overwhelming response to last week's video. Just absolutely bombarded with emails and phone calls and agents calling me, thanking me for, saying the things that needed to be said. Everybody kind of views me as a neutral person because I work in the production field and because I have a good track record of running the bands that I've been in, because I'm a drummer and I've run my own cover bands over the years and stuff like that. Tons of bands reaching out, wanting to know more, wanting to know how they could, learn more about making their band the best that it can be and getting, to that next level of where they can be. So that's what today's video is going to be about. Today we're going to talk about image again, except we're going to dive into different conversation about image. I know we talked about some of the stuff in last week's video. If you haven't seen last week's video, man, go back and check it out. I know it's a long video, but I think my viewer thing was like 80% of people watched it all the way to the end. It was almost an hour long, but it's just loaded with boatloads of information about the music business from a couple different perspectives. Today, we're just going to focus on the band thing, because we want to really deep dive into band development and how we can get there. So again, image, we're going to get into more marketing conversation. We're going to talk about how to get agents to actually return your emails and return your phone calls. Maybe you're someone that's been reaching out, or even big venues. You've been reaching out to bigger venues, you're a local casino or something, trying to get in and no one will answer the phone, no one will return an email. We're going to talk about how to get over that hump. And then we're going to get super specific this time around with pricing. I'm going to actually talk about specific pricing per class of band. A-rated bands being the top of the food chain, B-rated bands being probably 80 or 85% of the bands that we know working the cover band middle market, and then C-rated bands, which are bands that are just getting out of the garage or just getting out of the rehearsal space and just breaking into the club scene and maybe trying to figure some things out. So that's what's on the agenda today. I got my notes. I got my my Slurpee. I am officially endorsing 7-Eleven Slurpees. It's the original Slurpee, except no imitations. And they offer it in the double gulp for those of us that are a little extra, if you know what I'm saying. So anyway, let's hop in here. I think we need to start with talking about, just real quickly, why are you even in a band? Why are you even doing this? Because I think if you can assess your motivations, you can adjust your expectations. Let me say that again. If you can assess your motivation of why you're in a band, then you can better adjust your expectations of what you can expect to get out of that band. You may be an empty nester that's kind of been hibernating in, the church market, singing and playing music in your local worship band. I'm a Christian. I'm actually all for that. I think that's a beautiful thing. A lot of the circuit musicians I work with double as employees for bigger churches and musicians and stuff. So I always like to see that crossing back and forth and seeing the gospel getting out into the dark corners of the world and being able to let our light shine in these environments. That's super huge to me. But maybe you're coming out of that, you're an empty nester, and you and your husband are like super into music, and you want to start a band. You want to go out and make a couple dollars. You want to be playing all your local clubs and stuff like that and everything. That person's expectations and motivations are going to be radically different from someone like me, someone who has played in, the middle market cover band scene, or if you're someone who has played in the middle market cover band scene most of your life. Either on stage or off stage, you've just been part of the music business. People know that as your identity. You're a lifer, is what we call these guys. You don't really have a day job. This is your job. This is your career. Our motivation and our expectations are radically different. We're going to be much more money focused, and that sort of thing. And we're going to be the kind of people who are going to gravitate toward other musicians and other production people who are on our level. We will not have a lot of motivation to play with a B or C band because we really don't want to sit at rehearsal and wait for someone to learn how to play their instrument. I'm 50 years old. I've been in this for over 30 years. I'm not someone who has a lot of patience for that. I want to be in bands playing with guys that are on my level. Everyone shows at rehearsal. They know this is all part of band development. They know their parts. Rehearsal is not the place to learn the music. Rehearsal is a place where you put the music together. You learn the music at home on your own. When you show up at rehearsal, you should already know your parts. You shouldn't be sitting there at rehearsal listening to the song and having to hold up everybody while you got to take 10 minutes to hear the song again. You should already have arrangements written out. I always came to rehearsal with, full arrangements written out, for all the songs I was unsure about. I want to be super prepared because I want to respect everyone's time in the band. You know what I'm saying? I want to respect everyone's time that they had taken out of their life, away from their family, away from whatever it is that they do in their life, to come to rehearsal. And I respect that by knowing my parts. So I show up to rehearsal knowing my parts, having already played it 1,000 times at home, or however many times it took to learn the song. There's some songs I can listen to and never even sit behind the drums, show up at rehearsal, and I'm good. There's other songs I need to sit down and need to chart it, and I need to run through that sucker at least 4 or 5 times to really make sure my arrangement's correct on paper and that I'm getting the right vibe and the right groove on it before I get to rehearsal. When I'm at rehearsal, it's about trying to bring everything together. It's about gelling everything together. So that's super huge. I'm giving you that free of charge. So let's dive into image. We talked a little bit about image last week, about the importance of, how you dress, your makeup, hair, all that kind of stuff. A lot of A bands do costume changes, from, one block of songs to the next block of songs, as most of those bands have their sets all scripted out. So they probably, most of the time, they open up with like 4 or 5 songs in a block. That's a block of songs in that set. Then there'll be a break in the set, and on the set list it will actually say, talk about the website, talk about this, talk about that, that sort of thing. So, those are times for the singers and the front people to go back and do a wardrobe change if that's what they're doing, if that's the vibe they have. Most even B bands will at least change their shirt between sets, to make sure they have a fresh shirt on, because you sweat, dude. And some of these clubs are hot, man. Some of these outdoor venues are crazy hot, especially in the summertime and with the humidity the way it is and stuff. And boy, we've had a bout of 100-degree weather this summer. So, you guys know what I'm saying. So they'll have a fresh shirt on at the beginning of every set. That way, when people are taking pictures of you guys on stage, this is all about your image now. And your image counts on someone else's phone. You know what I'm saying? Like, your image matters on someone else's Facebook profile. When people are taking pictures of you at the gig, then you look like a professional. You look like a band I want to go see. You know what I'm saying? We're going to get into marketing here in a second, but, are your banners correct? You have Shrims up in front of the guitar amps, your band logos all over the place on the kick drum head, all that kind of stuff. You got a merch table set up over here with, the singer's girlfriend or somebody, working the merch table. The last band that I was in, the big band that I was in, we were sponsored by Budweiser and Monster Energy Drink, and they gave us a whole bunch of t-shirts every month or so with our band logo on it and with their logos on it and stuff like that. And when I would roll into a club, the first thing I would do is make sure the whole staff got t-shirts. I would just give them t-shirts. They were promotional items anyways. It didn't cost us anything. I always made sure the staff was taken care of first. I think that sets a tone in the room. I think that sets a tone with the staff. They all automatically like you because you're trying to give them something. And then, you know what? In the club scene, we are really there to try to help them sell food and beverage. You know what I'm saying? So you need to be talking to the bartenders, get their names, write it down if you have to, find out what the drink special is that night and what one kitchen special is or something like that. And at some point in your show, push that. Like say, hey, make sure you go back here and say hi to Sherry tonight. She's serving up Malibu's tonight is the drink of choice. Tonight is steak night, and we had steaks for dinner before we came up on stage. Let me tell you, they're absolutely amazing. Make sure you get some of that before you head out. Find out what time the kitchen closes so you can make those announcements before the kitchen closes, because a lot of times the band will play sometimes 2 sets after the kitchen closes. So make sure you get all that stuff together. That's all part of your image to the staff, your image to your audience. It communicates to the bar owner that you're on his side and you're trying to make him money, because guess what, if he's making money, you'll be making money, and your agent will be making money, and everybody's happy. No one's complaining. No one's ready to quit and jump ship to another agent or to another venue, or this venue just ain't right for me, or I didn't like the way the staff looked at me, or this one waitress. Dude, you got to let all that petty middle school stuff go, man, when you're in the club. This is about you. This is about your band, your image, and the impressions that you leave on people while you're there. So it's super, super important you become someone that's easy to get along with. Having been a house engineer at several, live music venues throughout my career, I can tell you that I'm the guy you really want to be nice to, because I kind of hold the keys to the kingdom of that room. This is my room. I'm here every week. The last room I was in, we were doing 150 shows a year in that room. I know the room better than anybody. I know the crowd better than you, because I see the same crowd, 2 or 3 times a week. If I give you some advice, some constructive criticism, and say, hey, look, you should maybe do 2 90-minute sets instead of 3 50 minutes, because the crowd tends to stay longer, you might want to listen to that advice, because this guy knows that at that second set break, you're going to lose the whole crowd. It's the 12 o'clock rush is what we call it sometimes, as they're rushing to get out of the club at 12 o'clock. If you do 2 90s instead of the 350 scenario, take shorter breaks. Don't never take more than a 30-minute break in a club. Really, 20 minutes is the best, but I know with some of the time slots, 30's where it needs to be. But make sure at 31 minutes you're playing music, not at 41 minutes or 46 minutes. Because the longer you're off stage, the less interest, even if they have a DJ in place, the less interest these people are going to stay connected to what you're doing. You're just kind of an afterthought at that point. And a lot of people just getting tired of sitting around, getting tired of waiting on you to get back on stage. Like, as a sound guy, I get people come to me all the time like, hey, man, is the band coming back up? Because you've been on stage for 45 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, they should have been up 15 minutes ago. But you know what? I'm not their mother, and I'm not the guy that's going to go and hound them about getting them on stage. The house guy should never have to do that with you guys. He should never have to come chase you down and say, hey, it's time to do this. Professional has a watch, and they know what time they're supposed to be on and off stage. Go and do it. So make sure that, you're leaving the right impression and you're leaving the right image with the people there in the club. Website is super huge. There for a while, everybody kind of got away from websites. It was all social media. Social media is definitely important. I'm not saying it's not, but so is a website, and you need to have a professionally shot promo video on your website, on the homepage of your website. And it should be pinned at the top of your band Facebook page. There should be all kinds of just like iPhone videos that your friends have been taking and posting and tagging you in all over your social media stuff. Everybody in your band should be pushing that weekend's gigs on their personal profiles. Obviously, you push it on the band profile, but you need everybody in the band pushing that as well, because it drives up the algorithm numbers and all that kind of stuff, and it gets that ad in front of more and more people. So that's super, super huge. I know I talked about on stage signage. That is probably the biggest thing that I see bands miss more than anything, is do you have a band banner? Do you have a logo that's legible from 100 feet away? I work with a band out of Baltimore called Shake the Room. Those guys are phenomenal at this. Their digital marketing stuff is spot on. It's uniform. The stuff you see on their banners at the venues look like the stuff on their Facebook profile, look like all their promo ads, look like their website. Dude, they just get it done. You know what I mean? And you can read their name on their banner from a block away. Not just because it's big, but because they have a logo that is legible. They use font that is super legible. You know, that's the trick to commercial art, is being able to read something from a block away. That's what you want. You want people walking up to the club, looking in the window to see your banner like, oh, hey, dude, that's Shake the Room, man. I know those guys. Let's go in here. They may not have even known you were playing there that night. But because your logo was super legible, and because you had a band banner and shrims and it's on the kick drum and all that kind of stuff, on stage you're bombarding the audience with your marketing logo. Just people walking down the street are noticing who's in there. Hey, man, I wonder who that is. It's Shake the Room, dude. They're in there killing it, because they always do. I love those guys. So that is super, super huge. I've seen so many bands do a band banner. They got a black background with like dark gray font, and it's some weird font. Like metal bands are horrible for this, especially the hardcore metal bands. Like the font that they use for their name looks like somebody repaired their asphalt driveway or something, you know. It's all squiggly, this, that, and the other. I never can tell what the hell their names are, you know. Or I can never see who they are from across the room, much less out the window and down the sidewalk or something. That's an epic fail, man. That's an epic fail. You're not doing yourself any favors, regardless of what kind of band you are, if your marketing stuff is not correct. And a promo video is not cheap, guys. It's not, you know. I mean, I think a typical price for a decent promo video that's 2 or 3 minutes long, maybe 4 minutes long, is probably around $3 or $4 grand. I know that's a big investment, but this comes back to you assessing what your expectations are for your band. Because if your expectations are just to be a low B band your whole life and play your neighborhood pubs, man, just go do that and be happy with the 35 or 40 people you put in the club and the $300 a night your band makes. I'm not mad at you. You do you, boo. You know, if that's what makes you happy, I want you to be happy. Be happy, you know. But if you're trying to grow and you're trying to become somebody who's going to make a significant amount more money than that, then you got to get this marketing stuff right, because this is the world we live in. And I mean, it is super, super competitive. Let me give you some numbers here. The middle market, when I talk about the middle market, I'm talking about nightclubs, so like county fair kind of stuff, local and regional cover bands, top 40 variety bands. You know, nowadays, like the 90s rock thing is super huge. Everybody's playing all the 90s stuff. 80s is always going to be huge. I don't think that's ever going to go anywhere, because that is such an epic decade of music and of style and of fashion and all that kind of stuff. I think it's always going to be there. And the 90s is a hot thing now. Like, most of the clients that I mix around Baltimore and DC are all basically playing the same set list. I mean, this band might play a handful of different songs in this band, but the core of their set list pretty much looks the same, because that's what's working right now. And it's heavily 90s. 90s country, you know, 90s pop, 90s rock, 90s R&B. That generation of 90s kids are in nightclubs right now. The demographic is in nightclubs right now. So that's what we're kind of talking about when we're talking about this middle market stuff. So B bands and A bands probably make up, I'm going to say 85 to 87% of the live music, you know, industry in our country. You know, that's excluding church production, because church production's huge. That's a whole nother animal. I'm talking about secular music. Secular bars, nightclubs, even up to the pro touring stuff. Because pro touring really only encapsulates like 3 or 5% of the music, you know, scene in our country. And I'll give you a great example of that is if you look at what gear music stores sell most, it's always middle market focused equipment. Because that's the biggest demographic that there is to buy equipment. And that demographic supports the middle market cover band scene and church production. You know, so that's the biggest numbers that we have in the country. So when I'm talking to the middle market, I'm talking to the biggest group of people in the country that are out there playing music weekend after weekend. So agents. I know we talked about agents last week, but we're going to hit it from a different angle today. How many of you guys have tried to get connected with, you know, agent A or Agent B, or, you know, you went and seen your favorite A-rated band because they were coming through town, and you got to talk to one of the band members, and it's like, man, how do you guys get in this place? You know, that's always the question B bands are asking A bands. You know, how you get, you know, 120 dates a year on your calendar. You know, some of them guys are playing 170, 180 dates a year, you know. The average Weekend Warrior A-rated band is playing at least 100 dates a year. You know, now I know some high B bands striving to be A bands that are playing 100 and 110 dates a year, trying to get there. They're doing the work. They're paying the dues. They're trying to get there. But you go to your favorite A-rated, you know, band's show, you know, concert, and you're talking to the bass player, the guitar player, or somebody, and you're like, man, who do you work with? And they tell you, well, we work with Agent B. Okay, cool. So the first thing in your mind is, man, I'm going to reach out to Agent B, and I'm going to send him an email on Monday. Well, you do that, and you never get a response. And then, you know, you find a phone number on their website, and you call, and no one ever answers. No one ever returns your calls. Or, you know, on the other side of that, a lot of A-rated venues get this too, which, let me just kind of let the cat out of the bag. 99.9% of A-rated venues are exclusive to an agent, which means don't bother the venue, because you're never going to get in there, because they only bring bands in through their agent, or they may have 2 or 3 agents they work with, but they really only book direct, just personal friends or something like that of the owner or that sort of thing. 99% of their calendar is coming from an agent. So don't even bother, you know, that A-rated venue. Or event, you know, if it's a wine festival or a food truck festival or your community concert, you know, series or something like that in your local town or municipality, you know, all those guys are usually using agents to book that stuff out. Some of the municipalities will be booking local bands because they know some people in the community, but anybody worth their salt, they're bringing in through an agent. So how do you get that agent's attention? How do you get that agent to answer an email or to answer a phone call? It's real simple, man. And this is not rocket science, and I preach this over and over again, and it's like sometimes I feel like it's just falling on deaf ears. You got to put butts in seats. That's how you get an agent's attention. You go and you play every room that the agent doesn't have a lock on, and you sell them out, 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 and you take them for whatever dollar amount you can get, because you're trying to make waves in the scene. You're trying to draw attention to yourself. You're killing it online. You know, you got, 2,000 or 3,000 followers on Facebook. You know, you got promo videos all over your Facebook profile, all over your website, because the first thing that agent's going to do when they go to check you out is they're going to look at what kind of support you have online. If you don't have that support online, they're never going to return your call, like, oh, these guys are nobody. Or if they're really getting hounded by a bar that they have a lock on, or a club or an event they have a lock on, and they have to book you, they're going to have all the bargaining chips on their side of the table, because it's going to be, look, we know these guys are nobody, or their calendar's full of animal clubs, the Moose, the Elks, the Eagles, VFW, AMVETS, all those fraternal lodges, and there's nothing wrong with playing those venues. Don't get me wrong. But 90% of the time, those are not A-rated venues. Those are high B venues. Even if they'll put 600-700 people in there, I know there's A-rated animal clubs, but that's different from A-rated nightclubs. Those are two different, things. But if they see all that stuff on your schedule, A-rated rooms usually want to book bands that are already playing A-rated rooms, or they're making enough noise where they can't ignore you anymore. And then, people always say, and I think I mentioned this last week, is, when we deal with an agent, it seems like they always have their favorite bands, and they only want to book their favorite bands in the good places, and we always end up with the crap gigs. Okay, well then what do you got to do to become one of their favorite bands? I bet if you're selling out every bar that you play at, you'll be one of their favorite bands too, because guess what? The more money you make, the more money they make. So they're not stupid. This is what they do for a living, They have everything to gain by you succeeding and nothing to gain by you failing. And if you're a band that's a constant pain in their ass because you're never happy with anything, they give you, and you're constantly, begging for more money, well, you can't ask for more money, man, if you're not creating the numbers to support that more money. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I know I talked about this last week, but I got to keep saying it because some of you guys ain't hearing me, man, Like, This is what it's about. When you make enough waves in the business, agents will reach out to you. Because here's how it goes. There's a venue owner for the best A-rated venue in your area, in your town. You know, he has a family and he has a social life of his own. And maybe by luck, because let me tell you, there's a lot of luck that plays into this business, a lot of luck. Being in the right place at the right time and making the most of every opportunity. He's out with his kids at the local city park and sees you play at their, Alive at 5 show, or their Fridays at 6, or, their Funky Friday. There's all kinds of these weird names for these midweek municipality-based, gigs that happen in like city parks and, that sort of thing, or whatever, the town square, they'll do that sort of thing. Maybe you just get lucky and the venue owner and his kids are there trying to recreate and they see your band. And they're like, you got, 400 or 500 people there because you're making waves, because you're getting it done. And because people are supporting what you're doing. You think that guy's stupid? He's in the business to make money. He's going to be like, who is this band? Like, where did these guys come from? Like, I've never heard of these guys. And look, they're blowed up. And they actually sound really good. Well, he goes back to his office the next day, calls his agent and says, hey, man, I need to get, X, Y, and Z band in my club. I seen them last night at the city park, and those guys are bad to the bone. And, man, they were bringing people out of the woodwork. Now the agent's calling you. See how that works? But here's the problem that I run into. Bands get frustrated way too easy. They don't understand that when you play a show, you need to have your energy level on like 13 at the last song of the night, every bit as much as it was in the first song of the night. Because you're always playing to the 3% that actually know the difference. If you go into a club for the first time and the only people there are the staff, you better entertain the socks off that staff. You better have that staff, talking to you at the end of the night and excited about your performance and going to their managers and going to their bar owner and saying, hey, man, we got to get these guys back. They were amazing. Yeah, there wasn't anybody here, but it was the first time they'd come here, and, we got to have them back. And maybe you got to play that venue for a year for less money than what you're comfortable with. But you're getting into an A room and you're getting an opportunity. That opportunity has value. Get in there and make the most of that opportunity. Do these things, that I'm telling you to do, and I promise you, you'll get from point A to point B a lot quicker than all the other bands who have an ego and think that just because they're showing up, people are going to show up. I'm sorry, no one's that cute, okay? No one's that talented, as much as I hate to admit it. And that hits our ego a little bit, but it's the truth, man. You have to work all this stuff. This is a business. Again, if you're happy playing at O'Reilly's, sports pub that you can barely get 80 people into, and you blow that place up every Saturday night or one Saturday a month or something like that, and that's scratching the itch, hey, man, I ain't mad at you. But don't get in the way of all the other bands that are really trying to get it right, that are really trying to, get there. But playing to that 3% is huge. I've had the biggest breaks in the cover band scene on nights that were dead. You know why? Luck. Because the right person was sitting in that room and they heard us. And we gave it 110% to the empty room as much as we would had it been a full room. Now, I know it's hard, guys. I know it's hard. I know it's like playing to a brick wall. I used to say it all the time. But you know what? It's the entertainment business. We're going to entertain whoever's sitting there. If it's 3 people, that's fine. If it's an old lady with her emotional support dog, guess what? We're going to get that dog rocking on the dance floor somehow. We are not going to be defeated in this. And you got to take that kind of approach to this to get from point A to point B, because there's 20 bands down the street that's looking to take your place. It's just the way the business is. A really good friend of mine, plays in an A-rated band, and we talk all the time. It's like, it's funny. You're prom queen one day and you're a streetwalker the next. Meaning that if you stop playing out within 6 months, you're almost forgotten. That's how quick this business moves. That's why it's so important to have your show together. Man, I can't say enough about song selection and transitions. Transitions are huge. I get asked to come out and critique bands all the time. And the number one thing, well, number one is usually signage on stage. That's usually rarely right or where it needs to be. Marketing is always an easy, low-hanging fruit thing to pick on a band about, because they're typically getting it wrong, because no one wants to dedicate the time to do it. Number two, though, is this other stuff. Is the fact that energy isn't where it needs to be, song selection isn't where it needs to be. And you know what, guys? Call me crazy, but you need to be playing the songs right. But let me take song selection to the next level. I've seen bands who could barely play the songs, but were playing songs that everybody wanted to hear, and the dance floor was packed, and people were showing up, 600-700 people. They're not the greatest bands musically, but you know what? They get all this other stuff right. They got energy on stage, and the song selection kills. People want to hear music they know. Look, we can do a video for all original bands and metal bands and bands that are seeking, to make it. We can do a video about that another time. Today's video is about this cover band thing, though. Like, you've got to play music that people want to hear. If you have a creative axe to grind, you need to get in an all original band. And don't manipulate the original arrangements to the point where they're unrecognizable because you want to put your own twist on it. Look, it's okay to embellish a little bit on music. We all do it as musicians. But if the song's unrecognizable, then you failed. You should play music that when people hear the intro, they're like, oh, that's my jam right there. And right to the dance floor they go. You put together 3 hours of that, even if you're only an average band musically, and I'll show you a band that's going to be successful. Because song selection is absolutely huge. Like I said last week, if you don't have to apologize for your performance and you don't have to apologize for the attendance of your shows, you never have to apologize for your price. So let's keep moving on. Speaking of price, let's end this video with pricing. So here is the numbers that everyone is like beating me over the head for, okay? A C-rated band that is just getting out of the garage, just getting in, they're looking for just a group of clubs that they can call home. A place where they can go and they can hone their sound, hone their live show, work out their transitions, stuff like that, find out what the crowd responds to, what the crowd doesn't respond to. That C-rated band is figuring all that stuff out. A B-rated band usually comes to the table having a pretty good idea of what people like and what people don't like. So a C-rated band, maybe they're not quite playing the music exactly right, They're going to make anywhere between $300 or $400 up to $600 or $700 for a 4-hour time slot. That's usually 3 1-hour sets with 2 30-minute breaks, or 2 90-minute sets with a 30-minute break. I know it's a shorter time slot, but that's a popular way to dish it out too, because having that one break really keeps people in the club. We talked about that a few minutes ago. So they're making 3 to 7. A B-rated bands make up the biggest number of bands in the cover band scene. So there's a broad spectrum of pay with B-rated bands. B-rated bands could be making $700-800 on the low end level. Maybe they're just graduating to that B level. They're really starting to get their marketing right. They're investing in what they're doing. Their transitions are great. Their sets flow nice. The song selection's great. When they get people on the dance floor, they know how to keep them on the dance floor and, not play for an hour. And in the last 2 songs of the first set, people decide to get on the dance floor. And you're like, oh, well, they're at the end of our set. We're going to take a 30-minute break. No, man, a smart band's going to play for another 30 minutes, then take a break. That way you win the crowd over. Those bands are making $700 to $1,700, $1,800. Higher end B bands can make, $1,500 to $2,500, especially when you get into the corporate stuff, or you get into a wedding scenario, or any of that kind of stuff where there's more money on the table. B bands, I've seen B bands make $3-4 grand, especially if they've been together for a long time and they're really good musically, So yeah, that's kind of what B looks like. Most B bands playing your A-rated nightclubs in the Mid-Atlantic are between $800 and $1,200. That is a safe number. $1,500. That's a safe number that I see a lot of bands playing in. from the club's perspective. Now, my own personal opinion is that's not enough, because I don't think we're charging people enough to get in the club. And I think all you people who complain about that really need to check your ego a little bit, because people have been paying $5 to get in to see a band since the early 80s. We're in 2023 here, you know? What other industry has not increased its cost? You're paying more for housing, gasoline, groceries, electricity at your house. You're paying way more for all that stuff now than what you did in the early 80s, trust me. But yet, you want to stand and argue with the door guy or the girl taking money at the door over a $5 cover? It's been a $5 cover for 40 freaking years, almost 50 years. Like, it's nuts. The cover charge should be $7 to $10, $7 to $12 all day long for your average, well-established B band and up. A bands ought to be making $15, $20 a cover. Some clubs can get away with that. But you people will bellyache and complain about that stupid cover charge. And what you don't understand is, if they're not charging a cover to get in, or they're only charging $3 or $4 to get in or something like that, they're just raising food and beverage, you know? So you're going to pay it one way or the other, you know? Okay, you might be the one cheapskate that's going to come in and drink water all night, and then, believe me, the staff's going to hate you for that. You better tip good if you do that. Like, I don't drink alcohol, so I drink a lot of NA beer, non-alcoholic beer, or soda, or usually water. I drink a lot of water. But I always make sure at the end of the night I tip my waitress well, because she's been, you know, helping me out all night long. I don't want her to think that I'm a cheapskate because I drink water. I just don't drink alcohol, you know. Now, I do usually buy dinner, and sometimes we'll buy dinner even for my crew. So we're going to rack up a bill. But I'm trying to support the cause here, you know. I'm not just there to take. I need to give back to some degree as well. So be mindful of that. I have had bar owners and agents contact me and say, look, you know, venue A is no longer comping food for the band anymore because they won't tip the waitress. I know a casino here locally that quit doing that. They used to give vouchers for the buffet at the place, which was off the hook. Sometimes they had like crab legs and stuff on that buffet. And they revoked it and gave them vouchers for the food court instead, because they wouldn't tip the waitresses in the buffet. Dude, that's messed up, dude. There's no sense in that. So anyways, back to pricing. I'm sorry, I get distracted easily here. So we covered B bands. Let me see where we are. Yeah, we covered B bands. Your pricing is always going to be dictated by your attendance. I know I keep saying that, but I got to get it drilled into your head somehow. If you're a band that's been together 10 years and you're still drawing 75 to 100 people at every show, don't demand more money, because you're not worth it, okay? I don't care how long you've been together. I don't care how good of a band you are musically. Maybe you need to look at song selection. Maybe you need to look at what's going on in your band. Maybe your band's not approachable. You know, let's just back up for a second. I got to hit this. If you're not going out during the breaks and working the room, is what we call it, which means you're going out and you're just going table to table and you're thanking people for coming out, you ain't got to start some big long conversation with them. Look, everybody in the audience wants to be friends with the band, okay? So if you go out there and you make a friend and you just say, I've had people that I've just went and said, hey man, thanks for coming out tonight. I really appreciate you coming out. You know, you could have stayed home, or you could have went to the movies. You could have went to the club down the street. But you know what? You came here and you don't know who we are. I really appreciate your patronage. I really appreciate you coming here and supporting us and supporting the club. That person has went back to their job on Monday and just ranted and raved about how they're like, JR's my best friend now. Like, I know JR and I, man, we're buddies, man. We're tight. You know, he's a drummer in this band, and, you know, man, y'all ought to come out and see me, you know, see him with me next week or something like that. That's how you multiply. My band personally catapulted to the next level when we just started working the room between the sets, working the room, getting out there, talking to people, shaking hands. You know, at that time, I was drinking at that time. We were doing shots with people, you know, or drinking a beer with them or something like that. And when that person comes back the next week with a table full of people, you better make a beeline over there and say hi to him or her, shake their hand, and then introduce yourself to the rest of the people at the table and make him feel like he is your friend. They got to be your BFF, and you're not playing a game with them. You're just doing the marketing side of what what your career is. Work the room. I'm giving you that for free. That wasn't even on the list here. So pricing, this is the final thing. Everybody wants to know what A-bands are making. And oh my gosh, I can't believe that, A-bands are making this or that or the other. I talked last week in last week's video about keeping your mouth shut. So I'm going to practice that and keep my mouth shut. But I am going to give you some ballpark numbers for A-rated bands, because I would never compromise the trust those guys have put in me to keep this inside information confidential. But I can tell you this. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what an A-rated band is making when they're selling out a venue and putting 900 or 1,000 people in that venue every time they play there. And it's a $10 cover. So that means the bar owner's making 9 to 10 grand just off the door. Think about that. And then you're surprised when you find out that those bands start at $3,500 and go all the way up to, sometimes 20, 25 grand. I mixed a band in Leesburg, Virginia from Salt Lake City, Utah last summer for a corporate wedding. They were ridiculously good. I mean, off the hook. Costumes, costume changes, dance routines, it was like an 8-piece band. Everybody in the band was like the best singer you ever heard in your life. Everybody in the band could play their instrument on a pro level. They had their own sound engineer. I was just there being the liaison between the local production company and their sound guy, helping him out. He actually mixed the band. And he sounded like $1 million. The dude obviously knew what he was doing, worked well with me. We had a great relationship through the whole thing. And I'll guarantee you those guys are making 20, 25 grand. Them people in Leesburg flew them from Salt Lake City, Utah out there. And I know I'm friends with A-rated bands that regularly, go to Europe, Jamaica, the Bahamas. You know what? It's mind-blowing the amount of expendable income some people have, for a wedding or a company, celebration of some kind, where they're going to fly all their managers to Jamaica and they want your band to come and do it. And they don't care what the money is, because they're just going to write it off on their taxes anyways. They probably need the write-off because they're making so much money at what they do. So they hire, A-rated band Z, and they go out there and they're consistent every single time they get on stage. They nail it every single time. They never have to apologize for the performance. They never have to apologize, for their attendance. Of course, in those scenarios, it doesn't matter if anybody shows up, because the corporate people are paying you to just play for their people. You may play those events and make that kind of big, crazy money, and there'd be 50 people there. I've run sound for those events. I've seen it with my own eyes. At that point, it doesn't matter. But they got there because they were selling out nightclubs. Because somebody was at a nightclub somewhere or at a community concert and seen those guys play and seen the crowds that they draw, and they want to be part of the fun. And guess what? They got the money to finance it. It's a good place to be. It's a real good place to be. Most of those A-rated bands are starting in the neighborhood of $2,500 to $3,500, for club level stuff. I've seen some of them make 5, 6, 7, 8 grand in bigger clubs. And I've seen them go, to the sky being the limit, in the corporate scene. It's absolutely amazing. And I'm not mad at them. Man, they deserve everything they get. They have done all the hard work. Most of those bands have been together for 15, 20 years, that sort of thing. They have earned every penny that they make. Most of them are full-time musicians. This is all they do. And I love those guys. I do everything I can do to support them, Hell, I want to be part of the fun. Whenever I get to work with them, it's always a pleasure. Even if there's people in the band I don't necessarily like or get along with, I still like being part of something successful. Everyone wants to play for the winning team, So, I mean, yeah, sure. Okay, I might not want to be BFFs with, this guy or that guy or this girl or that girl, but you know what? When it comes time to get it done on stage, those guys are going to deliver every single time. And if I'm lucky, they're doing it through my production system. And if I'm real lucky, I get to mix them. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And I'm very proud to say that COP Audio and Staging has those connections, and we do that sort of thing on a regular basis. Guys, I really hope this video, helped you out and gave you a deeper view of what it is to develop your band. Look at your band as a brand. You know, if you're really trying to do this, you know, if you're really trying to make money and you're trying to climb the ladder and be an established band that is respected and that is in demand, take these things, watch the video multiple times, take notes, and put this stuff to work. You're welcome to reach out to me. I'm easy to find, J.R. Everhart. I'm all over Facebook and Instagram and all that kind of stuff or whatever. CLP Audio and Staging. CLPaudio.com is the website. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel as we're trying to, push the YouTube channel, better so we can give you this kind of information free, So yeah, I appreciate your support. I appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time.